Welcome again to Because Miami. Billy Corben took a week off. We do not forgive him. We need his yammering. We need his relentless fire hosing in this town. This dirty town needs him yelling and screaming at people. So we've got a handful of things to get to with Billy today. We will talk to a genuine do-gooder who is trying, unsuccessfully, to clean up the trash that is all over Miami. We have a new song to play for you. We also have controversy galore, as we always do. We'll get to Billy and John Ruiz and the University of Miami in a second. But you were talking about this D2 race for a while. It was an important race. You always lose. You are trying to do good things, but you spend a lot of time losing. Before we get to you losing and very little winning, what are you looking at me like that for?
And as Jim DeFeeti says, whoever wins these elections, we win. Because if it's a good candidate, we get good government, and if it's a bad candidate, we get good content.
Yes, and we usually get good content, not good government.
Yes,
and
true.
It's disappointing as someone who loves this city. But before we get to what happened with the D2 results and before we get to John Ruiz, can you tell me about your latest problems with the Miami Herald? Because you were very public about criticizing their recommendation for D2 because it was offensive. I don't understand how I'm very proud of my work at that newspaper. I've been historically very proud of the work done by that newspaper.
Sure.
This seems like such a poor recommendation that I feel like there isn't a lot of precedent for the Miami Herald being this kind of negligent when trying to choose from among bad candidates.
So it's not that the recommendation was bad in terms of the candidate. We're all entitled to our opinions. I happen to differ with their analysis of who the most qualified candidate of the 13 were. But the quality of the endorsement itself, the writing of the endorsement, and the lack of candor, the lack of transparency, they recommended a candidate by the name of James Torres, who is the head of the downtown, they call DNA. It's a Miami downtown organization, community neighborhood organization. And James Torres had an arrest record dating back 15, 20 years ago when he was living in Arizona. Apparently, a lot of the arrests were the result of a messy divorce, as he says. And incidentally, his explanation is perfectly acceptable if you want to overlook it. The problem was the Miami Herald went and recommended that voters vote for him without mentioning his arrest record at all. Mind you could say, again, he got arrested for 4 times. It's not disqualifying. This is what happened. We still recommend him. That's fine. But they failed to mention his arrest record, of which there were, I believe, 4 arrests, the 4th of which was traffic related. They failed to mention that Commissioner Joe Carollo. Wow. This late in the day, Roy was right on top of that.
He was right on top of it, but your incredulity, the fact that in your voice everyone can hear that you didn't think Roy was going to be on top of that.
I mean, why would he?
Because of how you said it.
You can hear it?
Yes, please continue without interruption. This is supposed to be flawless. The Joe Carollo song is supposed to make an appearance without you clearly doing jazz hands at Roy to try and get it.
I was
Please continue.
I'm now going to start doing jazz hands at Roy.
You just did, but you did it vocally. You did it. We all heard you. You slowed down, which you never do.
I don't know what vocal.
It was just you telegraphed it. You alley-ooped it in a way that was jazz handy. Continue.
So Joe Carollo nominated him from the dais to appoint him to the position without an election. They didn't mention that. They also didn't mention that Joe Carollo's former chief of staff was the campaign manager. Again, none of these things are disqualifying, but shouldn't the newspaper of record, who only has to make one recommendation? This is a special election. It's not like they have a whole ballot full of people to do. Yeah, there's 13 candidates, but one recommendation, and they fucked it up.
Explain to people why, just if you haven't been listening to Because Miami, explain to people why this district is important. Just quickly, briefly, please. Explain to them what it means that Ken Russell has resigned this position. Explain to them why it's absurd that there are 13 candidates, none of them any good.
District 2 is one of 5 districts carved up in the city of Miami. It is the most important district. Why? Because over 70% of the revenue for the entire city comes from this district. It runs right up the coastline, some very expensive, exclusive real estate going from Coconut Grove to Brickell to downtown up to Edgewater. The commissioner who was there for 7 years, this yo-yo salesman, Ken Russell, completely disenfranchised them. And in the time that he was there was basically a mutiny where all the other commissioners, who are, by the way, are welfare queens, these are donor districts who are stealing the money away from District 2 and spreading it around. Socialism. Okay? These guys took over the district. They took over the whole city, while the guy who was supposed to be representing this district, who generates all of the revenue that the largesse that the city runs on, was being completely unrepresented on the dais. And so people had an opportunity to change that when he resigned to run for Congress last year. It's a state law that requires, if you're going to run for higher office, you have to resign your position on an effective date certain in the future, which he did, and now he has 9 months left. Ken Russell had 9 months left on his term that now someone had to fill in. The commissioners then went to do battle. The 4 remaining commissioners had to do battle over whether they were going to appoint someone. So fuck the electorate, screw the people. We're going to tell you who the next 9 months who's going to represent you. That they wanted Martin Zilber, the disgraced former judge who we covered pretty extensively.
You torpedoed his campaign, correct?
I don't think we helped, Dan.
By putting out that Raconteur mini documentary in which his legal aid made the accusations that she made that he misbehaved while she was pregnant and beyond. You torpedoed that campaign.
I think he was polling pretty poorly. He was in the margin of error with Sabina Covo and Eddie Leal and maybe James Torres, but really he was in the margin of error. But his negatives were so bad that I think voters were just waiting for that torpedo. They were kind of waiting for a knockout blow, and I think it's possible that the mini doc delivered that. Martin Zilber raised more money than all 12 of his opponents combined. Well over $500,000. We actually won't know the real figure until later this month when they put in their final reports. He spent anywhere between $700 and $1,000 per vote that he got to come in 4th place.
You interviewed him on the last Because Miami, and I thought he was woefully ill-equipped and defensive to answer your questions, which were fair questions. Tell us what happened in the district. Tell us why your recommendation, Eddie Leal, was why this turned out differently than you would have liked.
Well, it's not that I would have liked. Honestly, I think anybody who won the people of D2 probably would have lost. I just thought he was the most qualified of that crop of 13. By the way, they have to run again in November. The person who won has to run in the regular election cycle come November. They're only there for 9 months officially, unless they get reelected. And so if Eddie Leal runs again, he might not be, in my opinion, the best candidate come November. I'll have to analyze that ballot at the time.
Well, it wasn't an enthusiastic endorsement.
It wasn't an endorsement. It was a recommendation because people were going, dude, it's 13 people. Who the hell do I vote for? I said, let me take a look at it. And I talked to all of them. I met every single one of them. I got to spend a lot of time with 6 of them. And he was, I thought, the best qualified person out of that 13. One of the least qualified people was Sabina Covo, the person who the Miami-Dade Democrats endorsed enthusiastically and, in fact, campaigned for on the ground, passionately, banging on doors, putting out mailers, all that nonsense.
While you publicly said at every turn, this person is not qualified.
No, dangerously unqualified. And for a district that has been bemoaning, rightfully so, the disenfranchisement and the lack of representation that Ken Russell provided, they just elected Ken 2.0. Ken literally endorsed her. So as my late great friend Al Crespo used to say, don't help anybody in the Grove because you cannot help people who will not help themselves.
Just to be clear, as you say, either way, I get either good government or I get good content. Just to be clear, the person who won among the 13 candidates was not merely not the person that you recommended when just choosing from among bad options, but is the person that you would have selected 13th most qualified.
No. There were less qualified people, but they didn't really factor in electorally speaking.
Well, from among those who could have won, she was the worst choice, the least qualified choice, according to you.
Of the so-called top contenders, I think she was definitely one of the least, if not the least qualified. I would argue Martin Zilber is more qualified for her to sit in this position. He would not vote the way anybody would want him to. He would be totally corrupt, self-interested, and vote along with the other corrupt commissioners, Diaz-La Portilla and Joe Carollo. But he...
That was very short. It was very short.
I can't play the entire thing every time.
You don't have to play the entire thing, but he's a wife is not the thing you play either. You can finish the joke.
Joe Carollo. So, Zilber, though, with his experience, corrupt though it may be, would have actually, yes, he is objectively, if you simply look at the resumes of him and Covo.
He's a former federal judge. State judge who's corrupt.
Yeah, so that's good, especially in Miami. That's pretty good experience, actually. So, but no, listen, this is going to be great content. I think Sabina Covo is right now, she's living the famous Abraham Lincoln quote, better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and to remove all doubt. So she's going to be up there on the dais thinking, I shouldn't say anything.
I thought that was a Mark Twain quote.
It was Mark Twain dressed as Abraham Lincoln, though, with the beard and everything. Yeah, and the top, the big top hat and all. But she is going to either speak and remove any doubt, or is she going to sit up there silently? And D2 is going to be very dissatisfied with her.
She didn't sound like she was ready for an interview.
No, this is the thing. The more people. Remember, they had 5 weeks for this special election. They ran a campaign in 5 weeks. So Zilber lit all of that money, other people's money, on fire in 5 weeks, over $500,000. Now he's vacationing in Paris with his wife because it's exhausting to burn $500,000.
Forgive me for continually interrupting you, but as it relates to this particular victory,
yes,
when I heard you interview this woman,
Sabina Covo, Commissioner Covo,
all I heard was this person's bullshitting. This person does not know what she's talking about.
Doesn't know what she's talking about. Woefully unqualified. And in a nonpartisan local race, the Miami-Dade Democrats injected themselves into this and picked a profoundly unsuitable candidate, a person who hired Christian Ulvert, by the way, a character on this program who is the puppeteer of Miami-Dade County Mayor Danielle Levine Cava. He is a cancer Florida politics.
This guy again.
A cancer on Florida politics, an absolute toxic force who, much to the delight of a great many Floridians, has helped to destroy the Democratic Party in this state, make them an absolute non-entity and totally irrelevant. And so he gets hired by all of these, especially all these Democrats, and he is absolutely a horrific force. And now he's been running the county, which is going to ensure that Danielle Levine Cava is a one-term mayor. She just announced, by the way, that she's running for re-election to try to raise a lot of money and scare people off. She's not going to scare anybody off, and I guarantee you she will lose in 2024. But now Christian Ulvert is in City Hall. He was in County Hall, helping to control a $10 billion a year budget. Now he's in City Hall in Miami, helping to manipulate a $2.5 billion a year budget. And that's the thing, too. When I said to Sabina Covo, I'm like, this is a question of your ability to judge character. If you hire a person like this, how can we trust you when you have to staff up if and when you win? How can we trust that you're going to hire the best people to deal with the issues of the people and the constituents? In fact, we should run a clip of my interview with her when I asked her about that.
Christian Ulvert is a prominent Democratic consultant, strategist. He's also a registered foreign agent to Qatar, a regime known to be anti-Semitic, homophobic, and misogynistic, in addition to doing business with the communist regime in Cuba. He also, of course, works for the county mayor, organized a trip of county officials, all expense paid for junket by the regime in Qatar. One would say of dubious ethics and most certainly a conflict of interest, if not literally, then at least the semblance of it. Are these the kind of characters and the kind of ethics we should expect for you to bring into City Hall in Miami?
No, I shouldn't be judged by the consultant that I chose to work with. I think that this is a nonpartisan race. Professionally, Christian and I are working in a good way, and he's doing a good job. I feel comfortable with the team, and that's all I have to say about that.
Right, you said it's a nonpartisan race, but I mean,
Parties do endorse,
by
but it's a
Democrats.
nonpartisan race. It's a nonpartisan race, but the Democratic Party is in its right to endorse
But the people
anyway.
you hire and the company you keep in City Hall matters. Staff matters. You can ask Ken Russell. The people you hire and how they interact with the rest of the city, etc., matters. Character matters. Being a good judge of character matters. Being someone who brings on a staff and brings on a team, whether it's for your campaign or for your city staff. Just like people bring up the issue of your bankruptcy to say, well, she wouldn't be a good steward of public funds then. If she can't handle her own personal finances, why should she have any part in the $2.5 billion budget of the city? I thought you answered that very well. So I'm asking you now, when it comes to judging character and paying money to people, those who are donating money to your campaign, is that the kind of judgment of character you'll bring to City Hall?
What I've seen from Christian Olber is that he's a great professional, and I can only speak from my experience.
She pivots. I mentioned that he's a Democratic consultant, and she pivots and she goes, well, but this is a nonpartisan race. I said, yes, Sabina, but here's a flyer where you're endorsed by the Miami-Dade Democrats and 3 prominent Democrats, including Nikki Fried, the new chair of the Florida Democrats, Annette Taddeo, former Florida State Senator, and Ken Russell, the former commissioner of this seat. I said, you're talking about me making it partisan. What could be more partisan than the race you're running in a nonpartisan race?
Let's move on from the general incompetence of D2. I think we have covered this enough over the last month. And let's move on to your beef with Sugar Daddy for the University of Miami, John Ruiz.
I have no beef.
What is the latest with John Ruiz worth talking about?
I have no beef, Dan. I think he's a colorful character. I think he's a uniquely Miami character. I think he came to a school like a bull in a china shop, a school with a target on its back, and made sure that we had a spotlight shined on us to ensure that if the NCAA wanted to make an example out of anyone, which is what we've been talking about on this show now for practically 2 years. My beef with John Ruiz is not that he's a generous, wealthy man who wants to help the Hurricanes compete and win in this new NIL era of college sports, but that he clearly was going about it in a way that was going to let the NCAA say, hey, Miami rules 2.0, right? Let's be real about it. If they were going to make an example out of anyone, it was going to be Miami, and he gave them every excuse and opportunity to do so. Whether we did anything wrong or not, you knew the very first, now we have the distinction, historically, of being the first
really
university.
It's amazing. Mike Ryan told us this would happen in some way. I just didn't have it happening in the University of Miami women's basketball department.
And incidentally, are there other universities out there doing the same, if not worse? I'd bet the rent on it, of course. But we all knew that they were going to come here first to make the biggest splash, to make an example out of us for everyone else. That said, Dan, February is the shortest month of the year, but it was a very long one for Miami Hurricanes NIL Sugar Daddy and Mike Ryan's favorite uncle, John H. Ruiz. First, late last year, after he announced that his company generated 99% less revenue in the first 3 quarters of 2022 than Ruiz predicted pre-IPO.
99%. He's a billionaire, but
just to be clear,
his 99% below expectations
in the first 3 quarters of 2022, because they still haven't released, I think, the fourth quarter of 2022 yet. But in the first 3 quarters, they made about $4 million in claims recovery income. As Law.com put it, tracking well below the $992 million in gross revenue that was expressed to investors. Meanwhile, the company racked up a $135 million net operating loss, and co-founders John Ruiz and CLO Frank Quesada had to invest over $100 million of their own funds into the public company, and also pay their own law firm $20.1 million in legal fees. The company was so successful, Dan, that they rebranded it. They changed the name of it from MSP Recovery to LifeWallet. LifeWallet, the product that was the company wholly owned by MSRP Recovery. Now, the whole thing, the law firm is called LifeWallet for some reason. So the month of February begins with John H. Ruiz getting sued by the actual founder of LifeWallet for allegedly not paying him to buy the company LifeWallet, which is now the name of his company. That's also the company that he has spent over $10 million reportedly on NIL deals with predominantly Miami Hurricanes athletes. So the actual founder of LifeWallet, claims, quote, the defendants, meaning Ruiz and his company, have effectively stolen and thereafter improperly profited from the unlawful use and possession of the LifeWallet assets to the tune of millions of dollars, despite not having paid the plaintiffs 1 penny of the purchase price. So the guy's claiming that John Ruiz basically stole LifeWallet from him and didn't pay him for it, and now owes him, the claim is over $12.5 million. Then in February, Dan, the press found out that John Ruiz's family, his sons, his ex-wife, they were very involved with George Santos, the mystery congressman
the fraud
from
politician,
the
politician most associated with lies right now, because nothing he's ever said or put on his resume is true.
And as it turns out, there is this company, the DeVolder Company, which is a Florida company, despite the fact that he's a congressman from New York, that is people have alleged is a shell company that illegally financed his campaign. And it turns out John Ruiz's family members were very involved in that company and possibly giving George Santos work, claiming Santos claimed that in part he helped broker high net worth people into boat deals, and the Ruiz family owns the cigarette boat racing team. One of the sons, former University of Miami baseball player, is the CEO of that company.
Are we going to go through all of February, or is the
this
song
is just February?
Is the song going to do this?
This is just February. No.
Do people need all of this information?
A little backstory.
Okay, before the song. But I want to get to the song.
Yeah.
I want to get to the calls. I want to get to the guy picking up trash in our trash-soaked city.
Dan, it's the shortest month of the year, February. Okay,
how much more crud is there before we get to the song?
So then he threatened, you may recall, to sue the press for reporting about his family and George Santos. He threatened to sue everybody who retweeted the article about it. He threatened Ari Cohn, the First Amendment attorney, who he had not once but twice on this very program.
Threaten everybody.
He filed a 130-page bar complaint against Ari Cohn.
140 pages.
140 pages in Illinois, which was dismissed as fast as they could read it. I don't even know if they were through. I don't even know if they were.
Faster.
Yeah, they weren't even through reading it.
They dismissed it on page 3.
Okay. And he was so upset that Ari Cohn was so super mean to him on the internet that he threatened everybody with lawsuits. Okay. Then in the last week of February alone, Dan, we've come to the end. We've come to the end of the shortest month of the year. John Ruiz's law firm lost 2 cases. And these are the claims recovery cases that are the backbone of his company. And they lost it because they failed to follow very basic notification laws in the state of Florida. 2 lawsuits that
missed deadlines.
They just didn't follow the law. And so the appeals court is like, we're going to combine these 2 losing cases and have you lose them in one fell swoop, in one judgment, in one order. Bye.
And so you decided to commemorate all this in song.
And finally, Dan, there was the sanctions. There was the fact that we are now the first school to be sanctioned by the NCAA for NIL-related violations. And here's the thing, Dan. I went.
Song. Just play the song.
No.
Who didn't see this coming? Who didn't see this coming?
I cannot have you hijacking the show.
I went full cane
with your just yammering.
I went full canes, Dan, and I was going to defend John Ruiz. And because I figured he didn't do anything wrong, the NCAA is just picking on Miami, right?
Yep.
And then John Ruiz posted a tweet defending himself.
Oh.
And then, such a good lawyer, he posted a screen cap of the NCAA rules and basically said, why are other schools allowed to do this and Miami's not allowed to do this? And then I read the rules, and the rules set out how universities can treat enrolled student athletes. The distinction there being that the violation he allegedly committed involved recruits who were not yet enrolled in the city of Miami or in the University of Miami. And if he cannot even read and interpret the nuance of a NCAA bylaw that's embedded in his own tweet, I was pretty sure that the NCAA probably found the right. Now, lucky for John Ruiz.
Play the song!
Good morning. My name is John H. Ruiz.
The NCAA launched an inquiry into Ruiz's NIL deals with Miami athletes.
I'm super rich, so you can't be mean to me. In public or in private, but especially where people can see you're being mean to me.
from a lawyer's perspective.
'Cause I don't really know law. To John H. Ruiz, a retweet demands some legal action or a formal complaint. Make it rain on the Canes. The stadium is a pipe dream. I'll never build it at all. John Ruiz is a sleaze who's never read the Constitution.
We have biometric technology.
Before we get to Andrew Otazo, who does a very good work here and the details of the work that he does, Billy, please explain. Billy, please explain to people just what a trash problem South Florida has, Miami has, because we keep putting tons and tons of trash in a place that
In
seems,
City Hall, in county government.
No, but I'm not doing. I'm
sorry.
not doing metaphors. I'm doing actual junk, actual trash.
Yeah.
Explain to people the tons of trash mountain that we have that we don't have a place to put our trash anymore.
Well, first of all, the place that over 60% of the trash goes in the county just burned down in Doral, for crying out loud. So that's a really bad start. I don't know where the trash is going to go. I don't know how they're going to pick it up and where they're going to take it. Probably to Broward County at this point. But there's too many people, as we continue to say. And there's too many people on the beaches. There's too many people in our waterways and boats and too many people on the islands. And for whatever reason, they just feel compelled to use our environment as their own dumpster, as their trash can. So when people go out and party and they have a barbecue or they take their kids out for a picnic, they just trash everything right into nature, in the mangroves and the beaches and the waters. It's disgusting.
I'm not even talking about that part. That's infuriating enough, and that's why we're having Andrew on. I'm talking about the actual trash mountain that we have.
Mount Trashmore.
We don't have a place.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get to it in a second.
Well, Mount Trashmore, I think, is like the highest point of elevation, or certainly one of them in the entire state. And it's not. I think it's in Broward County, actually. But slowly, Miami-Dade County, that might be a really good answer to our sea level rise problem. Is we should just bury ourselves in just mountains of trash.
Andrew, thank you for being on with us. And you've collected how much trash? How much trash have you collected just wandering around trying to respect Miami more than idiots respect Miami?
So to date, I've removed 22,000 pounds of trash on the dot from South Florida's beaches, dunes, mangroves, and from the Everglades.
And you're doing this just because you care about the environment, the city, or are you wandering around depressed and muttering, these assholes, how can they throw these things in our mangroves?
I'm actually quite the optimist. No, I'm doing this in a systemic way because I really care about these environments. I've been doing this, I think, now for 5 or 6 years.
And what are some of the things that you end up finding? Because I would imagine every once in a while, if you're looking for trash, you roll upon the occasional severed human head.
No human heads yet. I did find a body bag without a body, so that was interesting. But everything you could possibly imagine that humanity creates winds up in the ocean, that winds up in the mangroves. So a quinceañera's dress, car parts, car batteries, used condoms, stuff from Cuba and Dominican Republic and Haiti, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of just the detritus that humanity creates.
When you say stuff from Cuba and the Dominican and Haiti, what do you mean?
So specifically from the DR and from Haiti, I get these little packets of vinegar that they use as condiments. They're all over the shore. They're yellow and white. I'm sure that people throughout South Florida have seen them. And then from Cuba, I've gotten like toothpaste and other like hygienic items.
Interesting. Can we do a top 5?
Oh. Top 5 trash that I picked up in the mangroves?
Yeah. Well,
sure.
Like top 5 like weirdest shit that you have found in the mangroves.
All right, we're going to do it in reverse order. We're going to start. He's got to have a good amount of stories here on things. How many hours have you dedicated to this? If you had to take a rough guess.
It's been 128 days, and I guess I average about anywhere between 5 to 12 or 13 hours every time I go out there. So, like, somebody else can do the math. That's not my forte.
Jesus.
Can you explain to us the inspiration behind it before we go top 5 on this? Because you're being optimistic about it, but I got to imagine that all the time you're kind of appalled.
Right. Well, look, so the point is not to just pick up the trash, because I can make a local difference in Bear Cup Reserve or wherever I happen to be working in. But the point is that I can then disseminate this message through programs like yours and on social media so that people realize that it's a problem and they can elevate it to an electoral issue, because none of this is going to get solved until it gets solved at the root, at a systemic level, rather than individuals.
Where does it start, though? Like, not everyone is wandering around saying, I'm going to dedicate this kind of manpower, this kind of energy, this kind of life force to something that is going to require me being indefatigable because I'm not going to win at the end of this.
We'll see. But yeah, it started off because when I was a kid, I used to love these ecosystems. I would go over there and I would just spend tons of time and find serenity and peace in them. And as time went on, more and more trash accumulated. And whenever I'd go out there, instead of finding that peace, I'd get infuriated until finally I was just like, well, no one else is doing anything about this. So I'm just going to go out and methodically pick up trash. And to my eternal gratitude and surprise, people actually cared.
Andrew is also the author of the first in what is a planned trilogy of books called The Miami Creation Myth. He's also a Miami meme machine on his Instagram and Twitter accounts, both his personal and his Miami Creation Myth accounts. But before we get to that and the release of his book this weekend, Saturday at Villain Theater, shall we do the top 5?
Yes, let's do the top 5, but let's tell people the launch party for the Miami Creation Myth audiobook will be at the Villain Theater. That's March 4th. That's right around the corner.
That is the launch party for the book. The audiobook is forthcoming, right? I don't think it's coming out yet, right?
That's right. It's still in production.
Thank you for the correction. Let's get to the top 5. Number 5.
Number 5 was the side of a ship from Louisiana that had been floating around since 2011. And the reason I know that is because it had like a safety inspection sticker on the side that said inspected in 2011. So there was that.
Excellent timing, Roy. Number 4.
Number 4 is a collective one. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of used condoms.
Disgusting. Just truly disgusting. I see them all in the alleys around here, and I'm like, what are these people doing? I cannot think of a worse place to have sex in South Florida than an alley.
Yeah. I just met the lovely couple that lives at the top of your staircase in your parking structure. It was soul-crushing.
Number 3.
Number 3, this one's for Billy. It was a square grouper. It was a 250-pound block of latex wrapped around what I assume was cocaine or marijuana, or probably cocaine. It was pretty heavy.
Hey!
Wow.
Yeah, it's a white lobster, we call that.
And what did you end up doing? Because many in our crew have said that they would do stupid things if they happened upon that cocaine.
Andrew, as your counselor, I say you plead the 5th on that. Don't answer that question.
I'll happily say what I did. I rolled it out of the mangroves, and then luckily it floated, and I rolled it up the beach, and then I told the county where to find it.
Do you have any earthly idea what the street value is that you left in that mangrove?
There, I'm going to plead the 5th.
It's got his fingerprints all over it, though.
Number 2.
Number 2 was a VR headset that I found in the mangrove.
Wow. It just wasn't like fell off a yacht, like some kid was playing on a boat or something?
I have no earthly idea.
Number 1.
Number 1 was the quinceañera's dress.
You like that one? You like a bit of a gown for a 15-year-old girl? What color was it? Where was it found? How frilly was it? What do you think the
very
worth
frilly.
of it?
Lots of frills, white, very long. It was gorgeous, but a little bit worse for wear.
Tell us before we get out of here what it is that you're doing at the Villain Theater so that people can support the kind of thing that you're doing, because it is worthy of attention, the fact that this poor man is wandering around South Florida, Don Quixote of trash, trying very hard to clean up our community. Tell the people what you're doing with the Villain Theater.
Right. So I wrote a book called The Miami Creation Myth, which is now on Amazon, and we're having a launch party this Saturday, March 4th at Villain Theater. It's sold out, unfortunately, but we'll have other readings in the future to celebrate this book, which is essentially a mythic cycle for Miami. So like gods and goddesses and heroes, just like the Norse or the Egyptians or the Greeks have. I wrote that only for Miami.
And speaking of Mount Trashmore, it is the surrogate Mount Olympus in your story, isn't it?
So no, that's Mount Tropical Park. Mount Trashmore is where the god of Chisne, Achebe, lives.
I see. Yeah, could you give us a rundown of the characters, because they're pretty super Miami.
You also have to explain to the English-speaking audience the god of chisme, of gossip. You need to explain some of the terminology you're using.
So chisme, for those who don't speak Spanish, is gossip, is rumors, and HP is actually the phonetic spelling of, I guess, a euphemism for hijo de puta in Spanish, which is son of a bitch.
Yeah, son of a whore, I guess, is excellent work by you. You wanted to ask him one more question before we get out of here.
Some of the other characters in the story.
Yeah, happy to work through them. So there's Pachango, the creator god who creates the universe. On his divine ping pong boom, he creates the sun. It comes over the horizon, and then his mother busts down the celestial door to the universe and yells like, "I don't own the electricity company, turn off that light." And Pachango's like, "I'm trying to create the universe." She's like, "I don't care." So he has to turn off the sun, roll up his ping pong boom, go to a new universe and start the universe again. And then there's like, there's Junior, the god of the earth.
Junior?
There's Marislaces. Junior,
okay.
Yes.
Marislaces.
Junior,
Marislaces,
yes.
The goddess of the Everglades. Yamilet, the goddess of the sky.
Yamilet?
Yuciel. What's that?
Yamilet?
He's just delighted.
Yamilet.
All he is delight. This is what's happening right here. You're giving him so much Hispanic flavor. He's giggling to himself. We're losing more than half the audience that doesn't understand that Junior is accented Spanish for junior.
This is all the sazon today on Because Miami.
Yes. And then there's Fino. He's the god of reason, and I love beating up on Fino because there's no reason to be found in South Florida, and he just has a horrible time.
And I understand the universe ends at the county line with Broward.
Yes. So in this book, the universe is literally Miami-Dade County, and at the county line border, there's a giant chasm, and no one knows what's on the other side. It might be Broward. Who knows?
Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Which is a frozen tundra. Yeah, it's not important.
So Miami now has its own creation myth. This is, I like to believe, the true story of how Miami came to be in Andrew's book, Miami Creation Myth, now available on Amazon. Reading, party, comedy, fun at the Villain Theater in Little Haiti on Saturday. And Andrew doing the Lord's work. You should follow him on Instagram. What are your socials, Andrew?
Andrew Otazo on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to follow Miami Creation Myth, it's just at Miami Creation Myth.
We will do, apart from this, a social video that talks about his meme expertise. I will also tell the audience that Mount Trashmore, for those of you who do not know, it is in unincorporated Broward. It is 225 feet high at the last reporting. 225 feet high of just trash. Look at how you smile there. Thank you. It's a disgusting thing to smile about. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for your good work. It is noble, although, as I mentioned, you're going to die under a sea of trash. Thank you, sir.
Trash. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.